Trauma bonds and trauma bond relationships. Welcome to today's episode, and we are looking at 8 signs that you might be in a trauma bond or stuck in a trauma bond relationship. This is a term that is coming up everywhere these days. Lots of clients asking about it. So, Quentin, how would I know that I am in a trauma bond?
It's quite difficult to know in the beginning that you're in a trauma bond. But one of the signs in the long run is a decline in the relationship instead of enhancement. Everything in life actually works in a spiral. So either you're going upwards in the spiral, becoming more, you expand and you evolve and you grow, or you're going down the spiral and you're becoming less. It's like something inside you is dying and you feel less yourself. So everything in that spiral, either it goes upwards or downwards. The most significant sign is that there's a clear decline instead of enhancement in the long term in the relationship context.
That brings us to the second sign, and that is that you are stuck in a pain and relief loop. So what does that look like? So if you think about a relationship like that, maybe there's a fight at some point, a conflict, disagreement, and that brings anxiety into play. And you feel anxious about, is this person going to stay? Are they going to leave? And they withdraw. So they create distance, whether they withdraw emotionally or whether they withdraw physically, there's a distance. And that distance creates a craving within you. Now you crave them to come back. You crave it to go back to like what it was before. And that craving then eventually, when they do come back, because they often do come back, they come back to reconcile, and then they come back with massive apologies and love declarations. You might even get flowers and chocolates and promises, lots of promises that this is never going to happen again, and they're going to change, and it's going to be better, and it's going to be like it used to be. That then spikes you up with dopamine, which makes you feel really good, and a relief. There's a sense of relief that they're back and see they actually do love me. See, they actually do want the relationship. And that just hooks you in because that feels so good until you get the next loop of fight and the next anxiety and distance and craving. And that loop then continues, and that's the pain relief loop, because now you are wanting that relief to just get out of the anxiety, and that loop continues.
Like we said, the inconsistency in the relationship is quite prevalent in a trauma bond relationship. So what we see is that the good days become less and the bad days become more. Many times later on, there's maybe very few, far in between good days. And that is when people get totally hooked on the relief cycle. And that is what we call the addiction. Because now the brain associates love with relief. Because if there's inconsistency, your brain doesn't know what to do with the inconsistency. Because it's either focused on love or relief. But the inconsistency confuses the mind. Now the mind associates love with relief.
And it wants that relief.
Yes.
Very much like an addict wants that hit. So your body actually starts craving that dopamine hit that makes everything feel okay. So in essence, this becomes a addictive relationship. It's not about the person anymore. It's actually not about the relationship anymore. It's about the experience of that relief for a moment.
Takes us to the third sign, and the third sign is we make excuses for their bad behavior.
Things like what?
The things we say when we make excuses for them is they are stressed.
That's why they're behaving that way.
That's why they're behaving that way. Having a bad day. I don't understand them.
If I understood them better, this would not have happened.
If I change, maybe they will change. Maybe if they heal, then something is going to change.
And one of the most common ones, they didn't mean it.
Yes.
It was just a bad moment. They didn't mean it. We keep justifying for them. That is the fourth sign. You take responsibility for their emotions and their emotional state. And how do you know that you are in it? You feel guilty. You feel guilty when they are upset. You feel guilty when you want to take some time or some space for yourself. You feel guilty when you prioritize your life or your interests or your friends. And if you have come down the line where you realize that this might not be such a healthy relationship anymore, and you are considering leaving, you feel guilty for even thinking that you should be leaving. So if you feel guilty most of the time in your relationship, you might be stuck in a trauma bond.
And that is why it makes it so difficult to leave, because you feel responsible for their emotions. You feel responsible for their behavior. And therefore you stay even though within you know it's time to leave. So that takes us to the fifth sign. And the fifth sign is your self-worth depends on them.
So if they in a good mood and if they happy, you feel good about yourself because you kind of take responsibility for the fact that they're now feeling good. And if they are upset and if they are in a bad mood, you feel bad about yourself. So your self-worth is tied to their mood and their reality.
Yeah.
And that is then the sixth sign, that you walk on eggshells around them. And you are worried about what to say, how are they going to respond to what you say, how you say it. And in the process, you suppress your own needs and you suppress your own feelings to avoid conflict because you just don't want to get back into that pain loop. You do anything to avoid the pain. And that makes you on high alert the whole time, monitoring them, monitoring the environment, monitoring that everything must just not be okay. Everything must be set up to not trigger them. So if you are walking on eggshells, that could be a sign that you're stuck in a trauma bond.
The seventh sign is that the relationship feels intense rather than safe.
And that intensity, from my understanding, comes from familiarity. So if you think about it, and this is maybe a tip that you can do and reflect on your past relationships, reflect on your childhood. Often what we see is trauma bonds come from where a person had to regulate their emotions around an emotionally volatile person in their childhood. It could have been a parent, it could have been a sibling, but somebody in your household that could be set off by the slightest thing. And the whole household started revolving around that person's mood. So what your body has learned is how to manage that situation. And that's familiar. So now you bump into this person and your body goes, oh, but I know this. Yeah. This is comfortable. This is familiar. I can do this. So you do that. You do intensity. You do inconsistency. You do continuous monitoring, continuous regulation, because that's what you know.
I've seen so many people who tells me their father, when the father walked into the house, everyone was aware. What they say, how they behave, what they do. And that's exactly what you explain. And interesting, Carl Jung says that what is unhealed, you will repeat.
So you keep going back to relationships like that because you, as we always say, you date your wounds until you heal. So you go back to that emotional volatility and regulation and nervous system high alert because that's not healed yet.
Yeah, it doesn't happen on a conscious level. It happens on an unconscious level. Yes. Your unconscious actually wants to heal that aspect in yourself.
So think back about your past relationships and maybe your childhood and see if you can pinpoint where did you have to walk on eggshells and regulate your nervous system just to survive, just to feel okay. And that's then also why safe relationships might feel boring. People often say, but there's no passion. There's no physical attraction or chemistry. You're quite right. There's not a lot of chemical cocktails in your head, but look out for our next video on exactly what happens in your mind when you're stuck in a trauma bond and what is the chemicals that are released. But it doesn't mean that a healthy relationship doesn't have a spark and doesn't have intimacy and doesn't have attraction. But often for people in trauma bonds, it looks like there's none of that and it looks like it's boring because they don't know safety. Okay.
And that takes us to the eighth sign. You lose yourself inside this relationship. And I hear so often many people say, I don't know who I am. And if they look at who they were before the relationship and who they are now, it's like they become two different people. They've lost their identity. They lost their sense of self. In life, we want to become more. We don't want to become less. And typical in a trauma bond relationship, people feel they become less instead of becoming more.
And the thing is, it happens slowly over time. It's such a gradual process. You know, as we said, the decline comes over time. At the beginning, you wouldn't necessarily spot this as a trauma bond. But by the time that you might realize that it is, you could have lost so much of your confidence and your self-worth, and this whole emotional entanglement with the person is so deeply in place already. There you have it. 8 signs that you may be stuck in a trauma bond relationship. If you relate to any of these signs and you see them in your own relationship or in those relationships around you, drop a comment in the comment section below and let us know. Which of these signs have you experienced in your life or have you noticed in friends and family around you? And we'd love to read your comments. What have you done to release yourself from these trauma bonds? And then also look out for our next video where we explain the chemical mix in your head and finally how to break out of a trauma bond.
So if you like this video, like and subscribe, and please share the video with those who need it.